Hi class, in this video we're going to talk about chapter 17, oligopoly. So this is the last one of the 4 market structures we'll go over in this class. So previously we talked about perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, and oligopoly is the last one. Okay, so first couple definitions. So notes oligopoly. So oligopoly is when you have a market with only a few sellers, so not many, only few, so somewhere between like 2 to 7 or 4, so just a few company, and then everybody sell either similar or same good. And the key between the competitions or between different companies in oligopoly is called interdependent, that the action of one company will have impact on other company as well. So everybody's all interdependent. Now, in economics, there's a study called game theory. So, by the way, when I was in college, I took game theory in my senior year in college. I was so excited. I was like, man, you know what? Finally, I can learn something that's useful in my life. Play games, right? But no, game theory is actually how you learn to set up experiment to test individual behaviors. That's called game theory. Okay, so it's a big part in behavior economics. So all right, so let's look at this interconnection or interdependent. So because there's only a small group of competitions, so 2, 3, 4, 5 companies, the companies always have a choice. Do I choose to cooperate, or do I choose to act in my best self-interest or to be selfish? So so when the companies are choosing to cooperate, so acting as one company, they can behave like a monopoly. And for a monopoly, they can charge a price that's more than marginal cost, and then profit can be maximized within the market. Now, however, if each company only cares about themselves, and then they want to cheat, and they want to behave according to their own self-interest, then the market will not be acting in cooperation, will be acting more like a perfect competition, where the price will be lowered, and then profit goes away. So this is a very tricky balance over here. So do we act as the best interest of the market for every producer in the market, or do we act in the best interest of our company, which means in a way might hurt other company in the process? All right, so the simplest form of oligopoly is called duopoly. So duopoly is when you have only 2 companies in town, and then these 2 companies will decide how many to sell, because this quantity, they decide that this quantity, so quantity will decide at the end how much will the price be, because the quantity goes up, then price goes down. And then quantity stays down, and price goes up. So how much the two companies will decide how much to produce will impact the price of the market, which will also impact the profit of the other company. All right, so suppose we have an example here. So this is a market for water. So this is like your tap water. Okay, so let's suppose for this market, the marginal cost of producing water is 0. So whenever a company supply water for individual household, it costs company nothing, $0 to produce it. So whatever revenue they have, their revenue is all equal to the profit. Okay, so on this list over here, it looks like the highest profit might be somewhere over here. So at $60. So when the market only produces 60 units, and then price is $60 per gallon, the profit is maximized. So suppose you have 2 companies, and these 2 companies, they are duopoly, and they'll be acting in cooperation, and then each company decided, let's each produce 30 gallon, and then we can both charge a price of 60, and then each company have a profit of 1,800. Now that sounds pretty good, right? But that's when the companies are cooperating with each other. But what if that one company says, sure, you know, I agree to it, but you produce 30, but you know what, I would cheat. So let's suppose this company here decide not to produce 30. This company decide instead of 30, we're going to produce 40 units. So company produced 40, and then the other company still produced 30. So 30 plus 40, we have a total quantity of 70 units of water. At 70, the 70 right here, the price becomes 50, and then the total profit is 3,500. So it looks like the market is worse off, because before the market was 3,600, but now the market is 3,500. But for the company who just cheated, they are better off, because remember they're selling 40 units of water, and then each water they can sell for $50. So this company's profit will be going to be $2,000. And then for the other company who didn't cheat, who still produced only 30 gallon water, but now because the other company cheated, price goes down to 50. This company profit is now at 1,500. So for this company who cheated, they are being rewarded for cheating, because for cheating they have a higher profit than before. Because if they didn't cheat, they will only get 1,800, but now when they cheat, they get 2,000. Now, who cares about the other company, right? So for this company, it's better off to cheat, because cheating is rewarded. Okay, so that's the problem with duopoly, that you can behave as a monopoly, which means everybody acting in the best interest of the market, and then we all agree upon the price and the quantity, and then we can share the profit equally. But if each company decides to cheat, the price goes lower, and then profit goes away. So let's imagine the other company also decide to cheat and also produce 40. Then the combined output between two companies will be at 80 and price of 40, and the profit goes down even lower. So for a monopoly, or at least for two companies who are duopoly, they can behave as a monopoly and then maintain this $60 and 60 units of water, and then share profits of 3,600. But the market become very competitive, that everybody just keep cheat. And then there are so many companies in town, it's hard to control the price, hard to control the quantity. Eventually, the market will behave like this. That is more like a perfect competition, where the marginal cost is equal to price. So that's the difference between monopoly, oligopoly, and a monopolist competition. Okay, so for monopoly, they can charge a higher price to make a profit, but for companies in monopolist competition, they can't. So for duopoly companies, they have a choice. Do you cooperate, behave like a monopoly, or do you just compete and then drive the price lower, and then everybody's worse off? All right, so we mentioned this before. So for perfect competitions, they will set the price where the price equal to marginal cost, and the quantity is the most efficient. That means anybody who is willing to pay either at or above marginal cost, they should be able to buy this good. That's called the efficient price. Now, if you're a monopoly, the monopoly will set the price where it's more than marginal cost, and that will be inefficient, because there will be some people who want to pay a higher price than the marginal cost, but because the price is even higher, they won't be able to buy it. So let's suppose for this bottled water, for this gallon water, that my personal preference, so my WTP, my willingness to pay for this bottled water will be $5. So that's the maximum I will pay. And then the marginal cost for production is $0. So if everything is true, that if the market is efficient, I should be able to allow to buy this bottled water. But because the price is higher, so let's suppose the price is currently at $10, then I won't be able to buy this bottled water anymore, because now my willingness to pay is lower than the price. So that's inefficient. So now you have somebody who is willing to pay a higher price than the marginal cost, but won't be able to buy this bottled water because price is higher. Okay, so duopolies, they have a choice. They can either collude, which means come to agreement and then form a cartel, and then act as a monopoly, or they cannot collude. So forget about other person. I should do whatever is best for myself. But collusion as a cartel is better than not to collude, because if you have a collusion, you can charge a higher price than before. But if everybody just act in their self-interest, do what's best for themselves, price will be lower, quantity will be higher, and then profit will go away. Okay, and then this is called the Nash equilibrium. I will show you what that looks like later. All right, so now what's a collusion? So collusion is agreement among firms in the market to either charge the same price or to produce the fixed amount of quantities. So in the previous example, if the duopoly company decide to divide the market half and half, and each one only produce 30 units, that will be called a collusion. Okay, that's an agreement between two companies. Cartel is when you have a group of firms acting as a unison. So the number of firms get together and then act as one firm. That's called a cartel. By the way, the biggest cartel in the world is a group called OPEC. Okay, that's the biggest cartel. OPEC. Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Okay. All right, so Nash equilibrium is this equilibrium will happen when each party is acting their best interest, choosing their best strategy, and then they'll come up with an equilibrium that's called a Nash equilibrium. And then more than likely, the Nash equilibrium might be the worst solution in the market because each person is acting on their self-best interest. All right, so we talked about this before. So we said oligopoly, they're better off when they're cooperating than not, because if they're pursuing their own self-interest, they will not be able to reach the monopoly outcome, which means the profit is maximized. Okay, so by which the profit was maximized. So away from monopoly outcome, the profit will be lower. So cooperation is better, but there's always incentive to cheat. So guys, let me show you. So we talked about this already. Let me show you a graph. That's very important for this chapter. Oh, so this is also important too. So the size of oligopoly do matter, because the more number of firms in an oligopoly market you have, the less likely those firms will cooperate. Because it's hard to control everybody. If you have just 2 people in the market, it's easy to get a agreement. But imagine you have 2,500 companies in town, then it's hard to get agreement. That everybody wants to cheat. Okay, so the more number of firms you have in oligopoly, the less likely cooperation will exist. All right. So now what's a prisoner dilemma? So this is a very popular game in game theory. It shows how the market will be like if each person is acting in their own self-interest. So the assumption is that we have 2 prisoners, 2 bad guys. They are all arrested and they're separated in different rooms. And each person is offered a deal. Do you confess or do you not confess? And if you confess, well, that's you off easy. If you not confess, then you spend more time in jail. And there's also something called a dominant strategy. That means this is the strategy we're gonna it's best for the player regardless what the other party does. So it doesn't matter what the other party does. This one strategy is always good for me. That's called dominant strategy. Okay, so let me show you an example. So this is a classic example of prisoner dilemma. So we have Bonnie and Clyde, and then Bonnie and Clyde are now arrested. So they both have a deal, a choice. They can choose to confess or choose to remain silent. Now, if both choose to remain silent, then the district attorney only has evidence on maybe just 1 bank robbery, and then each one will spend 1 year in jail. But if both confess, then the DA has evidence on all the robberies, then they will be spending 8 years in jail each. Now, however, the interesting part is this 2 cell over here. So if one person decides to remain silent, the other party decide to confess. So if Bonnie remains silent, Clyde confess, Clyde will get off easy, so he'll go free, but Bonnie will spend 20 years in jail. And then vice versa, if Bonnie confess and Clyde remains silent, then Bonnie will go free, and then Clyde will get 20 years in jail. Okay, so based on this picture here, it looks like that our best outcome is this over here. That everybody choose to remain silent, and we all get 1 year each. Now, let's imagine right now, put yourself in the shoes of Clyde. So you're Clyde, and then you're just being arrested, and then your partner is in the other room, so she might or might not confess, and then you have a choice. What would you do? So let's look at Clyde's situation. So for Clyde, if Bonnie decide to confess, what should Clyde do? So if Bonnie decide to confess, if Clyde decide to not confess, he will get 20 years. But if Clyde decide to confess, he will only get 8 years. So which means for Clyde, that if Bonnie decide to confess, for Clyde, it's best for him to confess as well, right? So mark over here. Now, if Bonnie remain silent, what should Clyde do? Now, Clyde can remain silent too. He will get 1 year, but Clyde can also confess, which he will get free. Now, go free is better than remain silent. So if Bonnie decides to remain silent, Clyde will choose to confess. Now, notice over here that Clyde always choose to confess. Doesn't matter what Bonnie does, right? So this confession for Clyde is called dominant strategy. Now, Bonnie also have a dominant strategy. So if you look at the payout over here, let me erase this. So if Clyde remains silent, what should Bonnie do? Bonnie can remain silent, Bonnie can confess, which she'll go free, or Bonnie can remain silent, which she'll get 1 year. Now, what is better? Confession is better, right? And then if Clyde decides to confess, what should Bonnie do? Now, Bonnie remains silent, he get 20 years. Bonnie confess, she'll get 8 years. So for Bonnie, this confession is also very good, regardless what Clyde does. So for Bonnie, confession is also a dominant strategy. So now you have both parties. Each person has a dominant strategy, and then they will always act in their dominant strategies. So they will end up over here instead. So remember this is 8 years each. That looks like the worst outcome possible, right? So this solution is called a Nash equilibrium. Okay, so when each party is acting in their own self-best interest, acting what's best for them, and then they will end up with probably the worst outcome possible in the game. Now, the Nash equilibrium was developed by an early mathematician called John Nash. So, by the way, this idea won him a Nobel Prize in economics. But there was also a movie made about him. It's called Beautiful Mind. Played by Russell Crowe. It's a pretty cool movie. You guys should definitely watch it. Okay, so this outcome is called a Nash equilibrium. All right. So we talk about this. All right. Let's look at another one. Okay, so another prisoner dilemma, but it's more applied to the business situation. So we have two parties, Jack and Jill. They're all in the market to supply water. So this goes to the example we did before. If everybody produced 30 gallons, then they will end up with 1,800 profit each. That looks like the best outcome possible. But let's find out what is each person's dominant strategy. Okay, so if Jack produced 40 gallons, what should Jill do? Now, Jill produced 40, she'll get 1,600. Jill produced 30, she'll get 1,500. So what is better? 1,600 is better, right? Now, if Jack decides to produce 30 gallons, what should Jill do? So if Jill produce 40, she'll get 2,000. But if Jill produce 30, she'll get 1,800. And again, this 40 is better because 2,000 is more. So for Jill, doesn't matter what Jack does, 40 gallons is a dominant strategy for Jill. And then for Jack, if Jill does 30, what should Jack do? Then Jack can produce 40, he'll get 2,000. If Jack produces 30, he'll get 1,800. So 2,000 is better, so he'll choose to produce 40. And then if Jill produces 40 gallons, what should Jack do? Jack produce 40, he'll get 1,600. Jack produce 30, he'll get 1,500. So what is better? 16 is better, right? So for Jack, 40 gallons is also dominant strategy. So each party have a dominant strategy. They will always choose to produce their dominant strategies, and the market will end up over here. Okay. Well, that's ugly. There. So both will produce at 40 gallon, and this is called Nash equilibrium. Okay. All right, so guys, you're gonna see questions like this on your quiz and also on your test too. So make sure you know how to play this game. Okay, so make sure you know how to find your dominant strategy, how to find the Nash equilibrium. So just take it step by step. So take it 1% at a time to find out what the dominant strategy is, and then find out the crossing between two dominant strategies. That's your Nash equilibrium. All right. So we talk about this. Talk about what's OPEC. All right, let's look at one more. So this is the arm race game. So between US and Soviet Russia, they both have a choice, either to arm themselves with nuclear weapon, or disarm, which means they don't have nuclear weapon anymore. Now, if everybody is armed, it's very risky, because it might really get to a like a arm race. It's very expensive and something might go wrong. So if everybody is armed, then we're all very risky. So this is not good at all. Okay, this is bad. But if nobody's armed, but there's no nuclear weapon in the world, then maybe two countries can be very safe, right? Because safe is better than not safe. So that might be the best outcome. But however, again, let's take it step by step. Okay, let's look at one by one. So if US decide to arm themselves, what should Soviet Russia do? Now, if Soviet Russia decide to arm themselves, they will be at risk. But if they choose not to arm, so disarm, they will still be at risk, and they're also weak, right? That's bad. So what is better? Arm themselves is better, right? So for Soviet Russia, when US Army choose to arm themselves, then Russia would choose to arm as well. Okay, so Russia choose to arm. But if US decide to disarm, what should Russia do? Then Russia can choose to disarm too, which they will be safe. But if they choose to arm, they can be safe and powerful. And safe and powerful is better than just safe. So they will also choose to arm. So this arm for for Soviet Russia is a dominant strategy. So it doesn't matter what US does, Soviet Russia will choose to arm. And then for US, same deal. So if Soviet decide to disarm, then for US, which is better, between safe and powerful or just safe, then safe and powerful is better, right? If Soviet Russia decide to arm, then US should do what? If we arm, we're at risk. If we disarm, we're at risk and weak. What is better? This is better, right? So for US, arming ourselves is also dominant strategy. So you guys have two parties, both with a dominant strategy, and they will both always choose to arm. Then you end up over here, and that is your Nash equilibrium. Okay. All right, so guys, know what's a common resource? So common resource, by the way, we learned this before in chapter 11, chapter 12. So common resource is when you have one resource is shared by everybody. So there's no ownership, right? So everybody have access to it. So like fishery is common resource, forestry is common resource, clean water is common resource. So if two company owns the same pool of oil, and then every company have a choice. Do we just do one well, which means it's very cheap, so low cost, with just one well, not lost, low cost, or they can do two wells, which means higher cost, but you might also get more oil out. So high cost, more oil. All right, so let's see how this work will play. Okay, all right, so two company here, ExxonMobil and Texaco. So if everybody only do one drill, so one well, so when they only do one well, then each company have a profit of $5 million, and that looks like the best outcome possible, right? So again, let's take it one company at a time. So if Exxon does two well, what should Texaco do? Now if Texaco does two well too, they will get $4 million profit. But if only do one well, that's only $3 million profit. So what is better? 4 is better, right? If Exxon does one drill, one well, what should Texaco do? Texaco do one, they will get $6 million profit, and then they do two, They do 2, they get $6 million profit, but they do 1, only get $5 million profit. So 6 better than 5. So which means for Texaco, doing 2 well is a dominant strategy. Now let's look at on the other side. Let's look at Exxon with their dominant strategy. So for Exxon, if Texaco do 1 well, then Exxon should do 2, because when they do 2, they have $6 million profit. When they do 1, it's only $5 million profit. If Texaco do 2 drill, then Exxon should do 2 as well, because 4 is better than 3, right? So for Exxon, doing 2 well is also their dominant strategy. So both companies have a dominant strategy, and then this is the intersection between 2 dominant strategies, and that is our Nash equilibrium. Okay. All right. Almost finished. So dominant strategy. Remember, this is regardless what the other party does, they will choose that dominant strategy. And then the intersection between 2 dominant strategies, that's your Nash equilibrium. All right. However, if this game is played many times, okay. So let's go back to our Bonnie and Clyde. So if this game played only once, then Bonnie and Clyde, they would choose to both choose to go with the dominant strategy, and both choose to confess, and both will spend in jail 8 years each. Let's suppose 8 years later, they both come out and they decide, you know what, we have nothing to do, let's get back together, let's go rob a bank again. And then they got caught again, so they got offered this game one more time. So would you choose to confess, or would you choose to remain silent? Now let's suppose each party decide to choose to confess again. They're going to spend in jail again for 8 years each, and then 8 years later they both come out, have nothing to do. What should we do? But if you play this game many times, this game is repeating many times, eventually the both parties will learn the rule of the game. Eventually both parties will know that maybe we shouldn't always act in our best interest. That maybe by cooperation is better for everybody involved. So once everybody learn the rule of the game, then you might end up over here in the later time. Okay, but if the game's only played once or twice, you're gonna end up with your Nash equilibrium. But if this game is played many times, then eventually everybody learns the rule of the game. All right, so okay, let's talk about this. All right, so almost finished. So government can sometimes improve market outcome. We learned this in the previous chapters when we talk about this externality. So one thing government can do is that we can prevent oligopolies from becoming a collusion or cartel, and then became more like a monopoly. Because when they're a monopoly, that's bad for the market. That's bad for the entire economy. So government always have rules and regulations against the forming of cartel and against the company become too big and become monopoly. So what they would try to do, they would try to force companies to compete against each other, and then try to reduce the power of one company. So there are two laws you guys need to know. They both called antitrust law. So they both intended to make the market more competitive, reduce trust in the economy. Now when we say trust, we don't mean in terms of how trustworthy are you. We mean trust in terms of power. All right. So no was a Sherman antitrust law. That's the 1890 law that forbid collusions between oligopolies companies. So companies cannot contact each other and then try to collude. Okay. And then the Clayton Act of 1914, it's just similar subject, but it was placed on top of the Sherman antitrust law, so it's more powerful, has more teeth. All right, so but both are used to prevent mergers. So if any company are too big, then when they try to merge, we're gonna stop them from merging, because once they merge, they'll become even bigger, and then make the market less competitive. So a couple years ago, when AT&T tried to purchase T-Mobile, that was a merge. They submitted the request to SEC, and then our Security Exchange Commission says no, that's not good, because your AT&T is already number 1 in cell phone service provider. T-Mobile is number 4. So if you have number 1 merge with number 4, they will become a super number 1, and that's bad. That's bad for market competitions. So that's why that merge didn't happen. All right. So a couple more terms over here. Know what's a resale price maintenance? So it's called fair trade. So this fair trade here that is still in place, even though it's bad for market competition, but it's still in practice today. That many companies have this resale price maintenance. So where the supplier of the good forbid retailers from lower the price. So one example you can think about Yeti. With the YETI, yeah, the cooler, Yeti cooler. So if you guys, anybody here has Yeti cooler at home, not the cup. The cup itself is okay, but the cooler is not cheap. I mean, buying Yeti cooler costs you anything from $200 to $400. But if you look at the same cooler at different stores, they all have the same price on it, and there's never a sale on Yeti coolers. That's because this resale price maintenance, where the Yeti, the company, forbid the retailers from lower the price. And then, my wife is telling me that when she bought her Chanel purse, for Chanel purse, the same thing. That doesn't matter where you buy your Chanel purse, the price will be the same. Now, if you go out of the country, that's different story, because out of the country, there's different pricing system. But within the country, within US, every store, every retail store who are authorized legally to sell some Chanel purse, that price is all the same, because the company, the headquarter company, forbid retailer from lower the price. Okay, that's called resale price maintenance. Now, know what's a predatory pricing? So predatory pricing is when company charge a price below cost. So again, the idea is to drive other company out of business, and then they can become the monopoly company in town. Now, this is not illegal, but company try not to do this, because if you do a predatory pricing, other company follows, and then before you know it, you have a pricing war. And when you have a pricing war, everybody hurt. Okay, because the only money who's benefiting is the consumers, but the business involved will all be hurting. And then last one we have for this chapter, know what's tying. So tying is when you try to make consumers purchase the bundle instead of just the good. So for example, let's say that Ford says that in order to buy a Ford car, you can only buy Firestone tire. So that's called tying. Okay, so that's another way to decrease level of competition in the market. All right, so I think that's it for this chapter. All right, guys, so that's it for this chapter, chapter 17. I will see you for chapter 18. Okay, bye-bye.